So welcome everybody to the Be Empowered show. I'm your host, Graham Hopkins. Today we have a special guest who I know you're going to really enjoy. I've been looking forward to meeting George. Helou, isn't it? Helou, George.
Yeah.
And George has got a practice in Perth, Western Australia, and we'll be talking a lot about how he got into this practice. And on his bio, George says that he develops empowering programs that help people evolve to claim their personal freedom. And really, this show is all about, it's a conversation of what it's like to feel empowered. So George, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Graham. It's a pleasure to connect with you and share.
So, George, I'd like to just fill the audience in on how we kind of connected in the first place. And it all revolved around a lunch I had with a young man in Perth who, I know he doesn't mind me revealing his name because he's actually going to come on this show after George. His name's Phil Bertram. Phil was a long-time family friend, still is, and I met up with him for lunch a few months ago, and he told me about the coaching that he'd received from you, George. And can I just say that Phil is a very, very smart young man. You could almost say that he's a brash young man who learnt the lessons of business life the hard way. And when he went to George, the way I see it, George, is that Phil was almost too smart for his own good. And you had the tools, if you like, to manage and channel his energy so that he started connecting with his desires and fulfilling his desires in regards to the business world. How would you see this?
Yes, and also Phil was very bright in so many areas of his life that if we could find a way to deconstruct what allowed him to be that bright and that empowered, and then reveal those elements and then take them to where he was struggling, we could therefore reveal he wasn't following his own inner wisdom in areas where he was struggling. And that then would allow him to realize he was the one holding himself back.
Which is, so what is it? What was probably just one little key, George, that enabled Phil to turn his life around?
Okay, that's really putting me to the test, one little key. I think one of the things that really did stick was the importance of tuning into yourself, and from that creating and establishing a connection with your core, and then allowing that to be moved into whatever you're doing. That journey, rather than being stuck at the head level with just rational logic all the time, that really is just one dimension of your intelligence. So being able to come from your inner intuitive flow and then allowing the brain to serve with the logic, that was very important. And then when he went through that journey and connected with himself first from his purpose, things started to flow and turn on.
Excellent. So George, this is the first time that I've met you, and it's a great pleasure because I've read a lot about your work. And can you just tell me, you graduated from Macquarie University in Sydney with a mass communication degree. So what is that for a start? And then what led you down this track of helping people with their personal development.
Sure. I copied my best friend. I copied his university preferences when we were in high school because, as far as I was concerned, I just wanted to go and become a sound engineer because I love music and I just wanted to be in that whole music industry, creating music and being a part of it. And so I had no reason to go to uni at that point. And so when they were choosing their preferences, I decided to ask my best friend what preferences he was choosing and why. And he was telling me about mass communication, how you can produce a message that can connect on a mass scale through production of TV, press, radio. And I thought, that sounds like fun. That sounds good. And I was just copying him. So I just got into university. And when I got accepted, I had forgotten what I had copied off him. And I had to reread what the degree was all about. And then finally make a decision, should I go or not? And I'd already been brainwashed by my parents to value a university degree and to just go, you know what I mean? So I did do it, and as a result, it just opened my whole mind to how ideas can easily be contextualized and recontextualized to influence the way people think. So that in itself was a dimension that would contribute to a journey of me personally starting to apply that from a personal development point of view, that the way you think can easily be changed, and that can change the quality of your life. And so when I got mentors in my life that would throw at me self-help books, I would read them, and that really was amazing to me. That changed the way you think, you change your life. And that set me on a path of personal development, and that became a passion for me. And then eventually, when I got into more and more work simply to earn money, I was diverting all my savings and my holidays to going overseas and doing personal development courses, and that went on for about 15 years. And so slowly that started to immerse in everything that I did, and eventually it just became my career.
So do you run your business by yourself? Because I noticed there's a couple of other guys involved on your website. Are you in partnership with other guys, or do you run the business in Subiaco, Perth yourself?
Okay, so I'm currently running it myself. However, there's a team that has been building in the last 3 months, especially. I've certified my first coach in my program recently. We had our first management meeting last week. So there's 7 of us with another 5 that are coming on board in a greater capacity to finally launch what I'm doing into courses and retreats. But before that, for 3 years, I was just a life coach practice.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the 2 courses that you have set up while you've been on this journey.
I think probably the best way to share with you the essence, the core of where I'm at with my personal development and what I offer people is through explaining EP7, Empowered for Purpose in 7 Steps.
Excellent.
And yeah, would you like me to take you through what those 7 steps are?
That'd be fantastic, yeah, thank you.
Okay, because that's exactly what Phil went through. And it was 7 2-hour sessions, so it was 14 hours of coaching. Okay, so these 7 steps are all about being empowered for purpose. So the first step is called the empowered identity. So how we identify with ourselves predetermines how we identify with our environment. And that if we identify with ourselves from a place where we second guess our ability, we doubt ourselves, our power meter goes down. If we come from a place of can-do with clarity and conviction, our power goes up. So if you see elite achievers who go the next level in their sport, their business, their career, or their art, you notice that that there's the same character attributes, the same beliefs that is allowing them to identify with themselves from that capability point of view and that confidence that exists for them. So in step one, we literally deconstruct what it is to be an empowered identity. And so it starts with your capacity. So we establish credibility for the fact that you are bioengineered with the capacity to be extraordinary, but neurologically configured to be ordinary or subordinary in some areas of your life. So we go through many biological facts, and they weave an incredible story, a detailed, credible story that allows people to finally realize they can. They're built to be able to achieve anything they want in their life. The second part of that is coming to terms with the real you, your true identity. So we process out of all the things we've been conditioned and raised to believe we are, including our beliefs, even our genes, our genetic makeup, our personality, our culture, even ideas. So what happens is when we move out of all these things, and it's a process, we use a lot of evidence and logic to show people that they are not those things. And eventually what happens, Graham, is that some people fold their arms and they kind of feel a little bit unhinged because you've just taken them through a logical process that's disconnected them from everything they thought they were.
Yeah.
Now, thankfully, we don't cut them loose. We don't say, okay, I'll see you next week. We immediately go to who they really are. And not even to leave people watching this video in the dark. The difference between what you're not and what you are is that who you really are, the true you, has got the strings. And this is just a personality puppet, a version of being. And so that when you move out of that as an observer and you see that you were just being these things out of conditioning, out of neurological configuration, it gives you permission to change any aspect of it that isn't working for you. And that's called reinvention. So every time you see an aspect of you that doesn't work from this true identity that's dynamic, you can change it. And the moment you change any aspect, it changes the version of you, and then you move in and you play. You emotionally embrace the new version, and you feel different, you think differently, and you're able to make different decisions, and that literally shifts you into a new timeline with a new destiny. And then you'll play on that destiny for a while until that becomes your new normal, and then you do it again. Now you change something else about you that disempowered you in some way, and then you go back into that new version and you've shifted timelines again, and on it goes. So it's about learning from your true identity. You can be any version that's compatible with your dreams.
And can I just add there, George, that when I went out to lunch with Phil, he sat there and he kept shaking his head, and he kept saying, I think you two guys are reading each other's mail, because the way I put that is exactly what you're saying, is that I say that we have this this gap between who we think we are and who we really are, and really all my work in empowering somebody is bridging that gap so they become one. So it's just another way of saying the same thing. So Phil was correct.
Right. That's right, Graham. And what you just said, what comes out is the true identity is the empowered identity. And any deviation from that is the illusion.
Exactly.
And so that's something that works out. And so then the third area of empowered identity is the principles. So we're raised with the way we should be, and we hear life lessons, you know, from our parents, and ideally life skills. So it shapes the way we should relate to ourselves and our environment. Some of it is really good. Some of it is about being moral and, you know, treating people the way you want to be treated. But some of it is about not believing in your capability. And so what happens is that a lot of these ideas are all mixed up together, and what I call whatever our true identity has structural integrity. In other words, the real you is very resilient and strong. Structural integrity. So any ideas disguised as principles that deviate us from that move us out of integrity, creating insecurity, and that's why we experience fear, self-doubt, and we collapse, we give up, and we derail emotionally. So if you were to build a house without using engineering principles, construction, architectural principles, that house won't have structural integrity, will it?
No.
So what about us? How do we hold ourselves together emotionally and mentally and beyond? How do we hold ourselves together? What is that constitution? And so I realized it was the principles.
George, sorry, when you talk about principles, are you talking about one's own principles? In other words, one's own truth?
I'm talking about, by definition, a principle is, I don't know if you can see that, but the ability to move from a place where you're not experiencing something you value to a place where you do. And the principle shows you how to get there. So a principle would be something like respect. While you might value respect, the principle of respect helps you to move from a place where you don't have respect, and it shows you how to be so that you move to a place where you get it and you give it. So those are classic principles like trust, moving from a place where you feel distrusted or you can't afford to trust to a place where you create a healthy level of trust. And so because of that, I went on an expedition searching for all the principles that empower. And because there is no limit to a context of where you can move from a place where you don't have a value to a place where you get the value, I realized that it's endless, the principles that can exist. Because any context where you're not empowered, you can actually then create a principle to move you from that place to another. For example, confrontation. So a lot of people don't like confrontation because they don't know how to confront. But if you were to confront with an open mind, from a place of respect and humility, seeking to understand rather than judge, all of a sudden you're confronting in an empowered way that allows you to be informed, and so that not to let yourself get tricked into misinterpreting and therefore blaming and justifying bad reaction to a situation where that person didn't mean what they were doing, or you simply misinterpreted it. So that is an example of the empowerment principle of a confrontation. Is a classic where you move from a place where you don't confront and you can't solve your problems because every time you do, it gets worse, to a place where you know how to do it, and now you're enriched by the value of confronting well. So what happened, Graham, was I settled on 52 empowerment principles. And these empowerment principles now offer a comprehensive grid reference so that no matter what situation you're in, you can get 7, 8, 12, 15 of these principles that help you orientate with why you're disempowering yourself and how to align specifically with different belief, think, feel, act so that you can change your environment.
Now, George, you say that the law of attraction is just one of these 52 empowerment principles. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit? Because that's the law of attraction is what excites a lot of people, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And I think, look, the law of attraction, being aware of it is important, because then it puts the onus on you to focus on what magnet you need to be, so that the attraction takes care of itself. Well, the other 51 empowerment principles address the magnet. They focus on how you need to realign so that you create your own signature magnet that will attract what you want in your life. But it had to be one of them, didn't it, Graham? Because you got to acknowledge that there are underlying forces at work, and so that when you carry yourself in a certain way, there are magnetic fields, and that people, even if you were to look at it from a practical point of view, which I like to do a lot, you know, I try to avoid the idea of just have faith, because I believe that if people get the credibility of information, they can lock in, and therefore now the faith is placed in taking a risk on something that makes perfect sense, rather than just have faith that the universe will provide. Well, no, don't just have faith in the universe will provide. Have faith that you should risk dropping a bad idea and replacing it with a new one, which is outside your comfort zone, so that you can reinvent yourself, that then the universe can show you what will be mirrored from that change. You know?
Is that why you say success is a science?
Yes, I do. Because everything can be deconstructed and understand through a cause and effect chain.
So where are we up to on the 7 steps, George?
So that's step 1. We've now made step 1 very tangible. You have a grid reference with how to be empowered through the principles. You finally now can orientate yourself through the true identity of the real you and start building that connection. And you definitely know you can. That leads us to step 2. Step 2 is about the personal assessment, so that you know where you're at today relative to that empowered identity. So that you can see where you're empowered in your life and what aspects of your life that now you can be guided with, so that you can reinvent yourself and go to the next level. So there are empowerment questions and disempowerment questions. The empowerment questions are things like, what are things that are natural to you as a talent? What are things you enjoy doing? What are achievements you're proud of? And disempowerment questions are things like, what are goals that are always out of reach? What are things that go wrong repeatedly? So there's lots of these questions on empowerment and disempowerment, and what we do there is we engage the critical thinking process to get to root causes. And so the premise here is that whatever's happening in your life is not independent of the way you choose to make sense of it. And how you act and react means that you are the root cause of the way you experience your life. And by putting the power within you, then we track through cause and effect the root causes of why you're empowered and why you're not. I'll give you an example. A talent like a sport, like golf, right? What we do is the first top 3 layers that we can measure is how you think, feel, and act. So that I've done this with people who play golf, right? And so I'll say, okay, what are all the things you do when you're playing golf? What are all those physical actions? And then I'll map, what are all the emotions you're feeling while you're doing all these things? And literally, we'll get 15, 20 or more emotions. And I'll go, what are all the thoughts running through your mind through that whole process? And then eventually, when we do justice to those 3 layers, we're able to track down to what is the cause of you thinking, feeling, and acting this way. And that is a belief system. So we say, what what must you believe about yourself and the game of golf for you to think, feel, and act this way? An outcome, because it's like we're mapping the dots of, oh, well, if you think that way, and act that way, what must you believe? And then we start to map these beliefs, and we get about 15, 20 beliefs out of that. And these beliefs are pretty cool when you're empowered, because they reveal your subconscious empowering belief system that is second nature to you. And we don't stop there. We say, well, how did you form these beliefs? And we start to acknowledge circumstances in your life, turning points where you drew wisdom and out of learning outcomes. And then we go to the 52 empowerment principles. And these 52 empowerment principles, right?
Yep, I can see that.
I literally go through every single one, and I show you how you aligned with it. And we count how many you're aligned with by the end of that process, and on average, 48 out of 52. Someone on one example of being empowered, like a talent of golf, they get to see that they're already living the empowerment principles. And that is great, Graham, because what it does is it not only makes the principles personal and credible, it places them already in you. You already lived them. But then that begs the question, why are they partitioned in their relevance? Why don't we allow those principles in other areas of our life? So when we get to disempowerment questions, we do the same thing. So say, oh, look, I'm always struggling in a relationship. I always seem to, go on a date, but I seem to clam up. I don't seem to be the real me. And all of a sudden, I just can't get the person to want to keep seeing me. This is just an example, right? A real one, by the way. I have clients that come to me with these challenges. And so I'll say, okay, let's go through, what do you do leading up to the whole date, leading up to it, during the date, and after? Tell me all the things you do during the date. And then we map it all. What are all the feelings you're going through, your emotions? We map that. And then what are all the things you're thinking to yourself? And we map that. And then we go, what must you believe for you to think, feel, and act this way? Graham, 15 odd beliefs come out on average that aren't pretty. And the person will look at them and go, oh dear, no wonder. I'm sabotaging myself. And sometimes, Graham, they'll say to me, but George, I get that I believe some of these things, but I don't believe 2, 3 of these beliefs. No way. They're too ridiculous. They're absurd. And I'll say to them, really? You don't believe them? No, of course I don't. Okay, let's have a look at how you think, feel, and act again. Let's review that. So as we review it, it dawns on them. And they go, oh my goodness. Oh no, not good. And they finally realize that those ridiculous beliefs are just, they're there as well. And that's a beautiful moment, because what it does is it removes denial, and it allows confrontation, full confrontation of these crazy beliefs. And I call that shock therapy. And what is beautiful about this shock therapy is that something you witness in humanity is, if you show them the truth, they want the truth. And when they see it, they're set free.
That's really
we're very wise. We're very beautiful within our nature. If we just see the truth, we click, we turn on. And I see that, and it's quite beautiful. And then we don't stop there. We say, well, how did you come to believe these things, these beliefs? And then we start to see an environment where they drew conclusions, wrongly held conclusions, through challenges in their life, where they didn't see the big picture at the time, and they disempowered themselves, and they're forcing anything that remotely is familiar to those past experiences. They keep, like neural triggers, they keep triggering the way they should react, and unfortunately it's misguided and disempowering. And then we go to the empowerment principles again, right? And then I literally say, let's see how many you're clashing with. And I kid you not, it's the same story. 48 minimum they're clashing with. So now they've got a roadmap. And now they're enriched with a journey of how they were doing that to themselves. And that's personal assessment work. That's going within and seeing what works for you and what's not working for you, but in enough detail so that you can do something about it. Right? That's step 2.
George, would you say that you're bringing a greater awareness to them? So what is deep down in their subconscious is now becoming conscious, and they're becoming more
That's
aware.
right. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. We're revealing the subconscious programs. And we're moving down the rope of think, feel, act to be led to where they are, because your subconscious is driving 95% of your thinking that then drives your feelings and actions. They're all interrelated. So literally, there's no reason why, using the 5 whys to root cause analysis, we can't track down and expose those beliefs. And that's exactly what we do. However, what's better than me doing it for them is they're learning to do it for themselves, Graham. And nothing pleases me more than a client coming to me and they did their own personal assessment on themselves and they reveal their own belief systems and they experience their own shock therapy and that changed their life. I mean, you know, you can catch a fish with, you can help people, you can catch a fish with them, but them learning to fish and catching their own fish, it's true empowerment, isn't it? It's really what we're about, you know. Now, what I'd like to do is I just want to talk about steps 3 and 4 quickly. Step 3 is imagination. It's about how we're born with the ability to be very creative. How society and the way we're raised, it starts to say no, it's not what can be, it's what is. Learn the reality of how things are. And so that starts to blinker us down. And so what we end up doing is we end up looking for answers rather than back ourselves to innovate and explore possibilities and realize that we can conceive and imagine a better way. We lose that ability. So in this step, we want to reclaim that, because if you want to problem solve, if you want to access and think of ideas that will allow you to achieve a lot more for a lot less effort and a lot less time and resources, we need to start to turn on that imagination. It is crucial to our empowerment, right? So we do that in this step. We've got creativity exercises and brain training. In step 4, it's the same thing for intuition. We look at how you're born with it, how we lose it, and then I use science to show you why you can trust it as a tangible asset. Then we look at how elite achievement absolutely relies on your intuition. To be in the zone, to be in flow is about intuition. And so then we look at creativity exercises, we look at disciplines, intuitive disciplines, and even brain training that's specifically designed to build your intuition. That's step 4. And
George,
all of this is... Yeah?
Because I know we're at step 4 out of 7, and I also know that you're time limited. How about we leave it with imagination and intuition, and I invite you back for another session, because I find this enthralling, to be honest, and I don't want to rush the process.
Well, Graham, it's funny how you would stop it at that, because the first 4 steps are about step 5. And step 6, 7 is about step 5. It's about your purpose. So I think it's a great way to end this session, you know, this meeting with us now, because what we'll do is we'll briefly recap what those 4 steps were when we meet up again, but I'll go straight into purpose and we'll deconstruct it, and then we'll move from there to living on purpose, step 6, and environmental alignment, step 7.
Excellent. So can I ask you a question here, George? I often ask my guests, did you imagine as a young child where you'd end up as you brought this together, as you brought these coaching packages together? Did you ever imagine that as a young child that you were going to go there?
Not as a young child of 12, 13 years of age, you know, I used to walk around the streets with some interesting contemplations. And I think that I had a sense back then that I needed to play a big game, and I didn't know what that game was about. But I had a strong sense, but no, I did not imagine it would look like this. No, that's part of the adventure. It just organically unfolded over many, many years.
Excellent. That's really precious. George will definitely make this a date for you to come back and finish off what George calls his EP7 course. And 7 steps, we've covered 4. So I'll be looking forward to hearing the rest of that, those steps in regards to purpose, George. So I'd like to thank everybody at this stage for joining the Be Empowered Show. I'm your host, Graham Hopkins. Before we go, I was just wondering if I could ask those viewing to do me a huge favour, because I'm just wondering if you could go onto iTunes and leave a review, because the more reviews we get, the more widespread this will become, and more people will hear this good news that George is sharing, and our other guests. If you'd like to hear more about the concepts that George and I have shared, like being more connected, George talked about identity, imagination, intuition, and all the other principles that he shared today, then it's so much in sync with my material that you can also go to Amazon and download my book called The Manifesto of the Inspirational Mind, or you can go to www.beempoweredgroup.com and download a free ebook there called Know Your True Value and Worth. So I think from the titles of those books, you'll see how much George and I are in sync together. So on behalf of our guest, George Helou, and myself, Graham Hopkins, we'd both like to wish you a wonderful future of freedom, peace, and abundance. Remember, change your energy, change your life. Thank you.
Thank you.
So good, George.